was my last ditch effort to ask God to take away being gay. And and through that walk, it was such a hard walk physically, but I did it alone, but along the way I met people and we formed a family,
Yeah.
and I grew to be glad that I was born gay,
Wow, that's beautiful.
and I didn't ask God to change me.
What's up, y'all? My name's Leticia, and you're listening to Confessions from the Closet, a podcast all about vulnerability and overcoming. It's time we get ourselves unstuck from these boxes and these closets that we've allowed ourselves to be trapped in. We're so much bigger than these boxes we've been in. It's time we go deep, y'all.
So it's interesting because I don't have like a really coming out story that's a small time frame. It's a very large time frame, and so involved in church since really young, and at the time in my life I couldn't even say the word homosexual or gay, and so when I was able to do that, I had a girlfriend and I was engaged to be married.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I had a girlfriend. We were engaged to be married, and I just started being really convicted, like I should really say something before we get married.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of when all that started. I said, "Hey," and I couldn't even say the word like I'm gay. I said, "Hey, I struggle with homosexuality," and she goes, "Oh, that's not a big deal. We can deal with this." And she was a little bit like not very confronted, 'cause she didn't like confrontation and stuff. And so I wanted to pursue counseling. And so I found the support groups to try to change that, because we both said, yeah, we think we can get rid of this. We just thought, it's not a Christian thing.
Yeah.
This is a deal, surely there's an explanation for this. And so I pursued counseling, and then I found support groups, and then ended up landing in with Exodus International.
Okay.
And I never was involved with the national team of people. I just was in my local chapter, and I wouldn't. It was very, very strange, because it actually ended up being very good for me, because I went through all that, and it was years and years and years, and came out on the other side really close to God, not really angry, but just saying, you know what, God is going to rather I be gay and be alive than take my own life.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of an option, and that was, and I really am cautious, because I know sometimes in the stories we tell, I think we find ourselves trying to tell like all the heinous things that happened to us,
Yeah.
because, but I don't necessarily like to focus on those things, but, so that happened, and it was hard, and, but ended up just telling my wife, I said, I am so, so sorry, because we tried so hard. And I said, I'm sorry, this is not right. I can't authentically do this. And that word authentic, comes up a lot in these conversations. I can't do this, I can't do it. And so we got a divorce, and, it was amicable. We kind of stayed friends, but, not chum buddies. And until the most recent documentary that came out, I didn't realize how that had affected me, really. Because I believe with all my heart that I choose to stay in relationship with God, and I know humans have faults, and so I'm not going to like, I'm just not the type of person to be at the front of the marching line to say, well, this group of people really, really messed me up and they're going to pay, and, they should, and so I just kind of went on with life. And, but when I think you had posted this documentary coming out, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I clicked on it, and I was emotionally wrecked just by watching the trailer.
Wow.
And it was a surprise to me. And I called Rafa, and then I called some other buddies that had been in that program with me. And I had full-on anxiety. I was and I couldn't, I couldn't really talk to anybody, and I tried to talk to some family, but they didn't fully understand. And so I can't watch that. And it's not because I'm so fragile. It's just I probably still have some things I need to still deal with. And I don't even look at that time as so tragic. Like, I don't hate anybody at all. It just felt like this, I felt like on this side of it, looking at that trailer of that documentary, I felt kind of like a person that had been kidnapped and maybe brainwashed.
Yeah.
And,
That makes sense.
And then and then all of a sudden you're brought to the television to be like, oh, wow, And so, and I'm older, of course, and so I can't necessarily watch that. I don't know if Rafa has. And so, all that to say, my coming out wasn't a short, I spent many, many years, my family knew I struggled with homosexuality.
Yeah.
And it was really something that put me in a good light with them, because I was this martyr that was struggling so well and just great Christian. And, I had a few occurrences over the years that when I would be involved in churches and they would find out about that, they would yank me from being the Sunday school teacher.
Wow. Yeah.
And you're just so, when I finally made a decision to just accept myself, that's when some things happened, some changes happened. And it's interesting, like some things that you have said really rang true with me. I just admitted, God made me this way.
Yeah.
And it was hard to say that as a Christian, but then you have this growth that happens, and that's one of the crux where your family members that are Christian have a hard time with, and so, and I don't want to tell everything. I guess so. That's I don't know if that covered what your first question was.
Yeah. Just, did you know when you were younger?
I did.
And that's when you told them?
And it was funny because it's hard maybe to explain this, because I think that our world, both all people involved in this society, they only see the erotic part of homosexuality. They eroticize everything, and so I knew as a child, but I certainly couldn't put words to it.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't eroticize it.
No.
At all. But I knew. And then when I told my mom, she knew, and it made me mad that she knew, and kind of didn't usher me into helping myself or something.
Yeah.
It was funny. And then she told me I could never tell my dad because it would kill him.
That's what she said.
Yeah, it would kill him. Literally. So
Yeah. That's crazy.
I didn't for a long time.
I think a lot of people do. I didn't tell my dad. My brother told my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then, I was mad at the time, but then when I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't have to do that. He got it out of the way. And then my dad called my mom for a while. She was like, how did you not know? I was like, you knew? She's like, it was obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. We raised the same kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a couple weeks buffer before I had to talk to him.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But now he loves Samadi, so it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it hard still going to church after you were accepting that? Was that harder? Or did you take a break?
I sure did. I sure did. I remember I told God that I had spent all my, because I was this kid, like, I was raised Southern Baptist, but my parents weren't super strict. And so I'm not this, because in our family, my parents smoked, and our family culture, dancing is really important. They didn't drink, and so we weren't strict, but I was the one that would make my family get up and go to church.
Oh, really?
I was this super dork. And, we would have youth group, and during like revival, I would preach,
wow.
and so I was, I was very rigid. And so I've changed. I'm kind of not the same person I was, but this might make me emotional. I'm not sure, but I told God, and I think God's strong enough to hear this. I said, you know what? I've pursued you all my life, and I was probably early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, let's say. I said, pursued you all my life, and you're hard to pursue. You're invisible, and I said, so you're going to pursue me for a while.
That's good.
And he did. And I say he, but, it's also funny how I that's one of my closeted beliefs. I don't, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, I think, are very fluid with their gender. So that's one of my closeted beliefs.
I totally agree.
And so, and God pursued me because I went into a lot of darkness with, not drugs, but just a lot of dark places. I went into a lot of dark places, and God came with me. And he was always there, made himself super, super known. I stopped reading the Bible, and he gave me these literature books, these historical fiction books, and pursued me. I read this historical fiction book called Mexico by James Michener. And in that book, it made me learn, because what that book is about, and of course it's not reality, but I believe that this happened. One of the main points in that book is that an indigenous people group in Mexico, I don't even remember the name, one of the women who was a really important figure in their tribe, she and her tribe at the time were doing human sacrifices.
Wow.
And so she became convicted inside of herself, saying this is wrong, and started to know who God and Jesus were. And then the Spaniards came, the conquistadors, and they claimed they introduced her to him. And she said, no.
Oh, wow.
I knew this person before you came. And that's my lesson.
Yeah.
That God is going to pursue me. And it wasn't warm fuzzies. It was just, he was there. So it was,
That's awesome. That's what I always say is like, I met God in such a nice, intimate way after coming out. Because the God I knew and believed in before didn't like me, didn't like that part of me, was mean, was hateful, because I was this mistake, as I thought. And then I came out, and it was like, when everyone else left me, he was there. While I was sad, while I was trying to find my way, he was there.
yeah.
And that's like the Jesus. I'm like, that's the one that can change the world.
Yeah.
Not the rigid
Yeah.
hammer that we grew up knowing.
The sledgehammer.
Yeah, because we had this thing about us that we were told was not okay. So I love that he pursued you wherever you were. You didn't need a building or
Yeah, no.
anything. And that book, I'll have to check that out.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
It's very good.
I like that.
Especially if you have, I don't know, do you have Mexican roots? Yeah.
Both of us.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. You'll like it then.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we're into like the Viking show. So when you said human sacrifice, I'm like, oh, they were probably serving Odin or something. Like, fascinated by the history.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, when Pray Away came out, we watched it and we tried to do a podcast around it. It was so hard to film and do that, but it's just crazy the things, like you said, brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I wasn't even in conversion, but like I believed so many of the things they said
Yeah.
through church.
Yeah.
And it does feel like brainwashing,
Yeah.
believing you're such a terrible thing, just
Yeah.
existing.
The one thing that I remember learning, and I want to take full responsibility because I was a grown ass adult man, you know?
Yeah.
And but we were taught that homosexuality is nothing but, oh my gosh, that word just left me. When you worship someone else, it's a very churchy word. Idolatry.
Idolatry.
It's nothing but idolatry. And I was convinced of that, you know, and so part of my process was kind of weird. Before I was officially separated from my wife, I went to language school in Costa Rica.
Wow.
And I invited her to come with me, and I said, hey, let's do this together. And she said no. And so we were apart. And while I was at this language school, so the language school was set up for missionaries, but they would allow non-missionaries to go if you had a letter from your pastor or whatever. And so I was there, and I was, not because I didn't like them, but all the missionaries would get together in chapel and they would speak English. And I was like trying not to speak English.
Yeah.
But I was also a super observer, like it bordered on voyeurism. And so I would observe how idolatrous they treated their husbands and wives. And I'm thinking, so I wonder if, you know, if that is something
Yeah.
I could look at. And so I sort of did. And so after my Costa Rica language school experience, that's sort of when I made a turning point. And that's when I came back and I told my wife, I said, I can't do this. And I'm convinced this is not idolatry. This is true.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was interesting shortly after that, you know, this is one of those things that my Christian family and friends just couldn't do and almost couldn't hear from me. I started to pray for my future husband.
Wow.
And, you know, God gave me all kinds of visions about that and my wedding.
Wow.
And it was really wonderful. And so once I was home, you know, visiting, I'd asked my mom, I said, do you think that it would be possible for you to think about maybe praying for my husband too? And she said, I'll have to think about that. And so it was kind of funny.
That's sweet. I love that you prayed for him. And so then how long after that did you meet him?
A long, long time. So I started in probably 1999 and 98 praying for him.
Yeah.
And then Raphael and I didn't meet until 2007.
Wow. That was a long wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
Some friends set us up. And because I had a very close friend getting married to one of his very close friends, and we lived in different parts of the country, and they lived in Texas. And so Raphael spent time in seminary, so he's really a spiritual person, and a lot of people look to him for a bunch of spirituality. So they had asked, and this was way before it was legal anywhere, and so they were just doing a ceremony
Yeah.
and so he was the celebrant.
Okay.
And so, and those two guys speak Spanish. And anyway, so the two men asked all the people standing in their wedding to write their vows, but they wanted to not know what they were until their wedding.
Wow.
So we turned our vows into Raphael. And so I wanted to write them in Spanish, and I knew Rafa spoke Spanish. And let me back up a little bit. The two guys are really super anal with planning, and so they planned their marriage a whole year in advance, their wedding. And so they had been meeting with Raphael a year before they were getting married. And so anyway, they told Rafa that he was potentially going to meet his future husband in me that year before.
Wow.
They didn't tell me until maybe 3 weeks before, because they knew me really well, and they knew I would go crazy. And it's true, I would have, you know, with research or whatever. So when they told me I did finally write the vows, and I emailed or something those vows to Raphael, and I said, hey, can you check these for Spanish and blah, blah, blah. And he wrote back, yeah, but I think it'd be better if we talk on the phone. And so this is where it gets kind of freaky. And so he called, and as soon as I heard his voice, I said, is it you?
You said it?
I said that out loud. And he said, yeah, it's me. And we talked for hours and hours and hours. We bawled. And I mean, it was so weird.
You're going to make me cry, Dad. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's like I've said this before on film, because he was involved in this. I'm going to forget what the name of that is. Dang it! There is a on the West Coast. There's a festival that kind of bills itself as a film festival to help bridge the gap between Christians and LGBTQ community.
Yeah, I can add it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you what that. Anyway, so he was a featured artist at that one year.
Okay.
And then at that festival, there was this. I don't know what is wrong with me. I'm forgetting everything. And I can tell you that later. There was this guy there who would do interviews, and his gifting was asking the questions, and they would film these people having someone else ask the questions. And it was, maybe it's that thing, the Streetcar Named Desire has a famous line in it. I've always felt more comfortable with strangers, like, maybe it was that, but this guy drew vulnerability out of people.
Yeah.
And so I said this on the film once, because the guy, Rafa, asked me, why do you love me? And it's like, I don't know why. It just is. There's a lot of reasons. Like, I think you're really handsome, you're smart, and we have good conversation. I said, but the truth is, I don't know why I love you so much. And I sometimes get really emotional because I don't know if everybody's going to be able to feel true love.
Yeah.
And this is the truest form of love I've ever felt in my life. I mean,
Wow.
It goes beyond, a love for God or a love for your parent. And so it's just, and you can't put words to it,
Yeah. That's sweet. No, he's wonderful. We love Rafa.
He is.
We've missed him. You're so sweet.
Yeah, you'll get to see him in a couple of days.
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll have to come by. I love that. Was it easier by then for your family?
No. Because they were not open for meeting any boyfriends, anybody I dated. My dad had made it clear, he said the words, you never bring anybody home, and I don't want to meet anybody, and you'll never bring them home. And so my sister was like, Dad, you don't mean that. And so when it was super serious, I told my family, hey, I'm going to bring this guy to Amarillo to meet you guys, because this is the person. You can choose to meet him or not. And my mom, it's so funny, she couldn't stay away. And so we weren't allowed to stay with my folks, but my sister and her husband let us stay there. And Rafa is magical.
Yeah.
And so you can't not love him. And so by the end, and literally it was a long weekend, by the end of that, my dad was like, well, so are you guys going to come home for Thanksgiving?
Oh, wow.
I
love that.
Yeah. So
That's so sweet. I love that they let y'all stay with them too. It's crazy how much just such a simple act is so powerful too, though, for us.
yeah, it really is. And like I would tell this story to my friends who are gay, because I've heard you kind of talk about this, and they would be so mad at me because Rafa's so there was a time, so when we would come home, we would be allowed to go to my parents' house. And here, just saying that sounds kind of freaky.
Yeah.
Allowed to go there, but we weren't allowed to sleep in the same bed. And so,
Yeah.
and so my gay friends would be so mad at me. They'd be like, that's wrong. You should cut them off.
Yeah.
And Rafa helped me. He supported me. He says, you know what? Anything we can do, because when people have relationship, this is the magic, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. That's something I talked with Matt and Catherine about the other day, is just relationship and my role at the church and trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Because it does get hard. I get defensive
Of course.
when those wounds come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should not be nice. And
Yeah.
that's such a hard line
It is.
to like show that grace when you're just like, but they hurt me, or they're still hurting our community. And
Yeah. And
that's hard.
I do believe that there are people designed to be on those front lines, like, kind of like war, to do that. It's just, that's not my role.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that was the head of my Exodus group in Minneapolis, because we lived in St. Paul, Minnesota when I was involved with that. His name was Joe, and he was that person. He was HIV positive. He was married to a woman, and they were both just on the front lines, pushing, you know, evangelical Christians to face this.
Yeah.
And that was not my role, you know. But there's a place for that for some people. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard, I feel like it's my calling, but it's such a hard, I try to tell Money, I don't care. And she's like, you actually really care. And you're very sensitive and tender. And I think that's where that's needed.
Yeah.
You have to be, because then you're still human.
Yeah.
But those walls when you go up. And that's something, like, I've been doing the 75 hard challenge. So I haven't had alcohol for 32 days, 34 days. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
So I like a glass of whiskey daily, at least one glass.
Impressive.
But the main reason was to try to dig into those traumas and heal them. Because I was like, I found more. I found a church where I was accepted and put on a worship team and given leadership, essentially. But I never healed the wounds. Those were still there. And then I find, like, I see a new person and I'm like, oh, they're staring at me because they know I'm gay and they're judging me. And Trey's like, also probably because they recognize you from stage and they're like, oh, I bet that's... I'm like, no, I automatically go to the judgment,
Yeah.
which I realize is a trigger.
Yeah. And you're pretty.
Yeah, Daryl used to tell me that. And I
Yeah,
was-
people don't. I always have this philosophy that pretty people sometimes don't know how to handle being pretty. You know what I'm saying? And you're maybe you're one of those, but you are a pretty person, and maybe you don't know how to. Because it is true, they're just looking at you because you're so attractive.
Daryl would tell me that. And I was like, no, Daryl, they're like, she's a lesbian. He's like, no, they think you're pretty. I'm like, no, Daryl. Like, we would argue about it. And I was convinced. He's
funny.
like, yeah, okay. It's because you're pretty.
Yeah,
I'm like, whatever, Daryl.
yeah, it's funny.
Or that was always our conversation. And so, I mean, even you talking about the trailer and those triggers and that trauma, it's such a... I just finally got to that point where I was like, I need to heal this, or I can't do the work I feel that I'm supposed to,
Good point.
because I'll have too many walls that keep jumping up
Yeah, good point.
from something that this person probably hasn't even done to me.
Yeah,
But I have all that wrath inside.
yeah,
I'm like, and I think that's my Hispanic side that comes out and just ready to fight.
yeah.
I'm like, golly. But, yeah. So y'all had your conversation. I really like this story. And y'all just knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love.
Yeah, there was just no question after that. And we did the stereotypical lesbian thing.
Y'all U-hauled it.
I U-hauled my butt from lovely Austin, Texas to Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Wow. How did y'all end up back in Amarillo?
So we were moved from Allentown to Washington, D.C. because Washington, D.C. is the coolest place on earth to live. It's a big city. Anyway, when we were living in D.C., my mom started to get sick with dementia.
Okay.
And it was really noticeable. And I swore and I pointed my finger at Rafa. I said, I'm not going back to that city. I will not live in that town.
Yeah.
And he said, Poppy. we have to go and help.
Yeah.
So we did. We came in 2011 to help out with my mom.
Wow. Because he served at Moore on the prayer
The
nights or something.
it was healing and prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean he did some other stuff. There was the prayer time too,
Mm-hmm.
before services or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Because when I came in, they had told me, yeah, we've had one guy that served. And I hadn't met y'all yet.
Yeah.
And then I came in, and I was the next couple that we came in, and there we were
Yeah.
with our child.
With your child. It's funny because something your mom had said is something I always told Rafa. Because I have always been very, very tentative going to any church, even more, even though I have super strong connections to more.
Yeah.
I said, Rafa, it's still an evangelical church. And at some point, they're going to require you to do something about this, you know? And they never did.
Yeah.
You know, and your mom had mentioned that is like, I'm so afraid
Yeah.
that they're then going to start praying that we get divorced or
Yeah.
praying that Rafa meets a woman and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That's crazy that you thought the same thing. And Daryl in all of our meetings would say, I never want to see you and Madi or Doug and Rafa get divorced ever.
Yeah.
It would break my heart. And he told me and Madi, if you ever need counseling,
Yeah.
me and Wendy don't know all the same things, but we'll do our best. Like he offered that, and it always made me feel so special.
Yeah.
Because he never wanted to not see us together.
Yeah.
And he never wanted us to leave either.
Yeah.
It's like, if something comes up and you feel that way, please come talk to me.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a special, I mean, obviously we all know that he was such a big part of the heart of Moore,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm glad we knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, man, I love how y'all met. That's just so sweet. That's great.
It is. And I always picture myself having kids with Rafa, but we met late and it was too old. And I say the too old thing, but it's kind of well known in our circle of friends, whatever, that I'm super into DNA and ancestry, but also DNA where it comes into play with your health and your metabolism. And I've learned some things about my DNA that I probably I've never put it to the test, but I'm probably infertile just for some DNA things that I know about myself. And I think that my stuff might be too slow or sticky or whatever.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy that you see so much infertility now
Yeah. It
in
is,
just
isn't it?
straight couples.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. There's
And-
a lot of toxicity. I mean, you wouldn't believe you might know this, but so, you know this about me. I'm a pharmacist and a nutritionist. But as a nutritionist, I've seen so many clients that are young men that have super low testosterone. And it's this growing problem all over our country. And I think it's the toxicities, it's a problem. It's
Yeah.
an issue.
In the food and in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the
Well, not
chemicals.
even just that, but yeah, all the chemicals. But there's the toxic load on our body is so crazy.
Yeah.
Even from your toothpaste, your
Yeah.
hair products, your
Yeah. Oh my hair product, like that's one of those products I have taken out.
well, I mean, but you can get good non-toxic stuff. you know.
Yeah, because we've switched toothpaste, laundry detergent, body wash, shampoo. Like, try to keep it as clean as possible. As soon as I found out, I was like, and it was around the time I was either pregnant or right after I had Apollo. I just realized how hard it was, and
Yeah,
how hard it was for me to even get pregnant. And I come from a very fertile family.
yeah,
And yeah, I've always had issues with my cycle. So I was like, okay, well, I don't want to put this on my kids,
Yeah.
I want them to be able to have kids if they want to have kids, and do everything I can to help them do that, I guess. I'm like, what's the word? Yeah. I was going to ask you. Oh, so knowing about DNA, do you know or have you done any research on just that we're born this way?
no.
No?
I mean, I've
Like
I've
genetically.
heard of articles about that. There's not, but I don't think that there's an overwhelming study
Yeah.
of that. And I don't, I'm super scientific
Yeah.
and I dig for answers, but there are some things that I don't feel like I have to know.
Yeah.
And because and part of it might be just, I want people to take me at my word. Why do I have to explain
Yeah.
this? And that's kind of a chip on my shoulder. But having said that, I find it super interesting, little bitty things like this. So one thing I know about my own DNA, and that when I look at DNA, I look at what's called mutations or SNPs, single nucleotide P. Anyway, these SNPs, and I have this mutation that most women have this mutation
Really?
that gives them empathy for their children. And so I have that. And so it
Yeah.
makes, I understand now why I have this strong empathy for people and it helps me in my job and,
Yeah.
whatever. But, but as far as people, have a recent massage therapist ask me, and she's, Protestant evangelical Christian, but she's very bold and felt comfortable asking me questions. She said, "Well, do you think, since you're a scientist, that like some kind of something went wrong in your mother's womb with flooding you with estrogen?" And I'm like, I don't think so. Honestly, just because all kinds of crazy things happen to women's hormones when
Yeah.
they're pregnant.
Yes.
Like things we don't know, things we do know, and the majority of children, we know this, aren't gay.
Yeah.
We are the minority,
Yeah.
and so it's not the majority. And so I think all those issues that could happen, whether you're being sprayed with DEET when you're pregnant,
Yeah.
or how many women keep taking their birth control pills because they don't know they're pregnant,
And the hormones and that.
yeah.
I didn't think of.
And so I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's a mutation.
No.
I think it's just because, even in the animal kingdom, we're part of the animal kingdom. There's plenty of examples of same-sex
Yeah.
stuff going on. And so I just think it's part of the equation.
Yeah.
And that's hard for Christians to hear sometimes, but I think it's part of the equation.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I made a turn. This is something I kind of do want to address because this is one of my beefs that if someone listens to this,
Yeah.
I want them to be helped by this. I don't want to argue about it with anybody. If someone's listening, I want them to be helped by this.
Yeah.
So I did a pilgrimage in another country where you walk. It's called, in Spanish, it's called El Camino de Santiago de Compostela. And it's the pilgrimage of St. James.
Okay.
And to me, how I was educated, because I lived in Spain, was that it's originated in Spain, but really all over Europe there are caminos. And so I did what I call the traditional one, where you walk like 480 miles, and also, I'm not Catholic, but I know a little bit about Catholicism. I did it in the year of Jubilee,
Okay.
which if you do the pilgrimage in the year of Jubilee, a couple of things you get. And I could be saying this wrong, so please forgive me if you're Catholic and blah, 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 and I'm getting it wrong. But your slate gets wiped clean,
Wow.
and you get to ask for a couple of miracles. And so it's my last ditch effort to ask God to take away being gay. And and through that walk, it was such a hard walk physically, but I did it alone, but along the way I met people and we formed a family.
Yeah.
And I grew to be glad that I was born gay,
Wow. That's beautiful.
and I didn't ask God to change me, and so when I came back to this country and I was intentionally making myself have relationship with my family, I I wouldn't yell it or be stern, but when my parents would try to say, "Well, if you just had a chance to meet the right girl," and I would just try to gently say, "No, I want to be gay. This is how I'm glad. This is makes me part of who I am and a great person."
Yeah.
And that was hard for them to hear, and I know that. And so I wasn't like yelling it
Yeah.
or wearing it on my t-shirt, but that was a hard thing, to say. I'm glad I prefer this, because I don't think I would want to be a straight guy.
Yeah.
And that's a turn as a Christian that's really hard to make, but you can make that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that in addition to this, because I've heard you say on here too, well, I don't want to say that because I don't want you to think I'm criticizing you.
No.
I'm not. And this is one of my beefs still with the church, is that people say, oh, we're not going to judge homosexuality because it's just a sin like any other sin.
Yeah.
And I just want to make it super clear with my family and wherever I'm going to church, is that I am a sinner. I am a sinner.
Yeah.
But Rafa and I, this is not sin.
Yeah.
This, and so that's hard for some people to swallow. And I don't want it to be, whatever, but that's just my belief system.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the truth of where I'm coming from, that you need to know, like, I am a sinner, but this here
isn't.
is not sin. So
Yeah.
that, and you can still be, like I think the main things of your podcast is to communicate to people that it's not a choice between being gay or Christian or in fellowship. You can
Can be both.
you can be both.
Yeah. Because we were told we couldn't
Yeah.
for so long. And I think that's you can say that, and then doing that,
Yeah.
that's another thing too.
It is.
Like right now, because I know my biggest fault is when I get so stirred up, and then my anger comes out or my ego comes out, and that's where I come from. And I'm trying to learn to like really take a deep breath before, and that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing on myself right now, is to better serve and communicate, because I realize a lot of that comes from my wounds, but also seeing that it's still happening to our community and the younger generations, and even us. And that's the thing. It's like, we didn't choose it, and that's not my sin. And I'm really excited about the 1946 film, just exposing how it all came about and the translation.
Oh, I haven't heard about this. Is
Yeah,
it a
I interviewed the director in one of one of the first 10 episodes.
Okay, so it is a documentary.
And the main person is an author called Kathy Baldock, and her and another person who's a gay man did all the research. They found all the documents from when the RSV was changed in 1946, and the word homosexual was put into the Bible.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and so they're doing the work, and I think it's going to be in a film festival this summer, but it's supposed to be released hopefully.
Level Ground.
That might be.
No, I'm saying.
Oh, that's what it was called?
That's the film festival from
way back in the day?
In the conversation. No.
Level Ground, okay. Yeah, but they'll be in a documentary.
Okay, cool.
And then my friend I posted recently, he is from Austin, and he just did a whole sermon series on homophobia and transphobia in the church, and backed it with scripture, and talked about eunuchs, talked about sexual minorities and stuff like that, and just backed it. And it was beautiful. Like, me and Maddie were very touched, and it was healing to hear.
Oh, wow.
Because he's been working on this for a long time. But there's that the work's being done. Like, I know that that's not my job to do the scripture. I'm like, that's not my calling. I think storytelling's more like what I feel. But I'm glad there's people who are doing the work and the research in this film, and then people like my friend Zach are really going to like help people hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I say this all the time, we don't really read our Bibles.
Mm-hmm.
We just take scriptures or what we've heard and then repeat it and don't do our own prayer and research. And when I came out, that was what I did. Was my mom taught me to research, but you don't just research the side you're for. You have to do both, or it's not valid.
Yeah.
And I had to read books that were against and told me why, and books that were for. And eventually I realized that all the books that were against all sounded the same. Very weak arguments, not backing. And eventually God was like, stop researching. I've already told you. I made you this way. It's enough. You don't have to research anymore. So I was finally stopped.
That's cool.
Yeah. I found a book the other day that I was reading when he told me to stop. And I only had gotten like a quarter of the way through. Like I could tell when I stopped reading it where my underline stopped. And I remember it because he said, that's enough. You don't have to research. Like I didn't mess up. So, okay. Like, okay. Put the book down.
Yeah. It's relaxing.
Yeah. Because I like to research and back the things I say and not come with just hearsay. So, can I ask you, because I was thinking about this earlier, so you're moving to Florida. What do you think about the parental rights, whatever, don't say gay bill is what we've come to call it?
Yeah. I think it's really tragic. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. It's funny because, we don't have kids, but we have nieces and nephews in the system there, in the school system. But I guess I also am having hope that some of that stuff might be reversed because I think there's a change happening.
Yeah.
It doesn't, so I don't think it's permanent.
Yeah. That's been my hope.
Yeah, but even if it is, I had, and I don't know the details of it, but I did have someone ask me, isn't it okay for that bill because it's for such young group of people? And I thought, I'm like, well, no. I mean, why? Sure, like maybe we don't need to teach those kids about any kind of erotic
Anything.
action, anything.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be specific to, gays? And it is interesting how, it's people in our society are going to always have two same-sex parents, like no matter where you are. And so if those kids can't give reports, I don't know, it just seems really awkward and absurd. And so I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful they'll see. And I've heard it's very vague from what I understand. And so the language is super confusing. But that's, a lot of us knew when we were that age. And I think, like, I have a pile of books over there that we talked about on last week's episode. And I was like, just getting to see yourself in a book, in a children's book, is very powerful and healing. I'm 34 years old, and I saw my family in one and cried at TJ Maxx. And that's how important it is.
Yeah.
Because if those kids know and they were like, okay, I'm safe, that's what you're telling them. I'm safe being who I am. That's suicide prevention.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
It is.
You're not teaching, like you said, when you knew, it wasn't an erotic thing. It was just know.
Yeah.
There's something different about me.
Yeah. It's very hard to convey that to people that are not gay. There's no eroticism.
Yeah. It's not at all. And that's what I think is heartbreaking, is that it's always been that way. And there was never an example as I was growing up to say something that was positive. You can be this, and you can have success, and you can have love, and you can have faith, and you can have children, and they can be happy and healthy. And very amazing, as I believe both of my children are.
Yeah. It's interesting because, a lot of people talk about having role models. And I just, I can't even imagine, but I do sometimes try to imagine what that would have been like,
Yeah.
To have a role model. I mean, like life would be so different, like so healthy and so strong,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's what I had that meeting the other day, and I was like, Madi reminded them, she's like, Leticia is not fighting for herself. She's standing up for the people who she sees being bullied, and she's very passionate about it. And I say, I'm always trying to be the voice for my younger self that I wish I had. Because here I am, I've been married almost 9 years, and these wounds are still there, and they don't have to be. And it doesn't have to be for the next generation. I don't want them to be 34 trying to heal things because the church hurt them or someone hurt them because they weren't safe or accepted, or saying, it's normal. You're normal. You don't have to understand it. And so that's like where all my drive comes from, is there is so much that could have been better if we had someone to look to that looked like what we now have and we're told we couldn't have. Yeah, it's crazy how to think about that. So.
One of the things I learned, so like when I got divorced, I don't know that I did this extremely intentionally, but I think there was some intention. I left my, my culture, my family culture, my country culture. I moved out of the country, and it afforded me the opportunity to not be influenced by my religion, by my family, and so it really helped me have a really good perspective. And I got to see what masculinity was in another culture. And every culture has its problems. I'm not saying there's, and I'm not bashing, but our culture, masculinity in the American culture, is a really odd thing. Super odd. I'm not a woman, so I can't really speak of what femininity is like, but, and that squared me away, to see that it's masculine to write poetry, or play a sport that's not football.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, our idea in this country of masculinity and femininity.
That's something we try to do with Apollo and Amaya. Is like, you can be whoever you are. I've always told Amaya, if boys want to paint their nails, they can paint their nails. If girls want to dress how, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's no gender norms in our house. It's just be yourself. And Apollo is, he's just a whole creature that we are trying to figure out.
That's funny.
He's just, I don't know. I feel like it's working so much better with him. Like, he's a dinosaur, and he wanted to buy a purse the other day. He loves makeup. He's just himself.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful to watch.
Yeah.
But you also have to protect it, because not everyone is on that same page.
No.
Here, especially.
Yeah. I had a cousin that, and this was after, word got out in the family, and he contacted me. He says, I think, he's got a big family, and he said, I think one of my kids is gay. What do I do? And I said, you don't know if he is or not. You have a perception of maybe his behavior or what he's drawn to not being as masculine as you do. I said, so you don't know. So don't try to guess that. I said, but no matter what, how weird or awkward it is that he wants to participate in, do it with him. I said, I'm not a parent, so take this with a grain of salt, but if he's a little bit interested in dolls or a purse, do it with him.
Yeah.
And so that just because that one thing is not going to define that he's gay.
Yeah.
Because I've my life has taken me to different places to where, some men like to dress in women's clothes, but they are not gay. You know?
Yeah.
And so
I've
I'm
seen
not,
that,
yeah,
too.
I'm not trying to put anybody in a box, but I'm just saying there's, you can't. And so anyway, that was my advice.
Yeah.
Just do it. Do whatever it is with him. Play in the easy bake oven with him.
Yeah. That's sweet. That's good advice. Yeah. Well, I think that's, as you were saying that, I think that's why Apollo is so free, is just because it's like we have never tried to put a box on him. And we've done that from the beginning. He's just, and he's everything. He's masculine and he's feminine. And it's really fun to watch because, I mean, he's got he's a lot of energy. I don't know. I'm trying to make sure we're cutting out red dye.
Yeah.
So like I could tell when he's had it. He's
Oh, really?
that sensitive. Yeah, he's got gluten and dairy sensitivity. So obviously red dye is very obvious when he has it. Like that's it. We're done.
And sugar. I'm sure you can tell when he has
Oh,
sugar.
he's so sensitive to foods. It's crazy. But yeah, he's very free and almost too free. He thinks he's 18. So
That's funny.
yeah, he's so free. But I just think it's powerful. And my mom was very like, I don't know. Say she always raised 4 hippies. We just do what we do, and we're all over the place. None of us are the same.
That's
Kind
good.
of all have our own things, and
That's cool.
she did a good job. Which I'm trying to do, but I think that's good advice. Did he end up coming out? Can I ask that?
Mm-hmm.
So he was? Mm-hmm. Wow. And I bet that was so powerful in healing as far as trauma that his dad would do those things with him too. Probably.
I don't know.
If he did it, if he took the advice.
Yeah, I didn't know if he
Yeah.
did it. I don't know.
But I think it could be.
Yeah.
Have you heard Man Enough, the podcast?
No. Oh, yes. I've only heard a little bit because I saw Jane the Virgin.
Yeah. Justin Bell.
And fell in love with that kid. And so I've heard of that.
Yeah, and that's what he's talking about, is that we've been taught like men shouldn't be in touch with their emotions and their feelings, and even like talking about his daughter throwing fits, and he's like, he just lets her throw fits in the store and lets her feel through her emotions because it's embarrassing. It can be if you let it be because you're worried about other people.
Yeah.
But they process emotions so much better when they're adults because they're in tune with them and their feelings, and how it's important for men to be aware and that is masculine.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool podcast. Yeah.
I really envy you guys.
Oh my gosh. I
Envy
keep
might
hitting
not
that.
be the right word, but for being parents, because you're getting the full, experience.
Yeah. It is a full experience.
Yes.
You see yourself. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You say something and then your 3-year-old repeats it and you're like, I sound like that. I need to work on that.
It's
Very
funny.
humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Apollo's the worst though. Because 10 seconds,
parent,
he repeats it. You're like, oh my God.
I didn't used to have a potty mouth either, but I do now. And if my dogs could repeat, then they would be like sailors.
Apollo. I'm not even going to lie. Maya will not. She's 11. Still won't cuss. She says, Apollo called me the B-A word or something. I'm like, what? He called you a what? And then he comes behind her and tells me exactly what he said. Like, no shame, no hesitation. She won't say it, but he will. I'm like, okay, just don't say it at church. That's the rule. You can say it. Don't say it at church.
No, I would say don't say it at school because then CPA's coming after you.
Yeah, well, that's why they're homeschooled. Someone said, are you going to send him to school? I said, are you kidding? No, never. He'll get sent home right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CPS, not CPA. CPS.
Yeah, he will.
That's so funny. So you guys have all my respect, and I'm happy for you
Thank you.
because that's so cool.
It's fun. It's work, but it's fun.
And it's happening so much. It just makes my heart so full, It's just happening so much all over.
Yeah, I'm seeing it
having
more
kids, yeah.
and more. That it's more common, and I think it's awesome. That's why I think the bill is so bad.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're everywhere.
Yeah.
And there will always be gay and trans kids in elementary and middle school and high school forever, for the rest of time.
Yeah, and it's because it's so different now. Yeah, yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
don't get that whole thing. It's just a weird situation. So I joke, totally joke, because like many of my gay friends, I call them the city gays, would come to Amarillo to visit because we're the country gays. And they were like, I don't know how you can live there. And
Yeah.
it's just so backward, and I don't want anybody to be offended by that. But, and so we're sort of doing the same thing. And so I tease, you can edit this out if it's more appropriate. I tease and say, well, we got our papers from the Gay Mission Board. We're reassigned to this
Florida.
cow town in Florida, this small country, rural area in Florida.
Got reassigned. That's hilarious. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, why do we live in Amarillo? There's so many other more accepting places, but
But it is good, because it's like Ralph and I right now are listening to this thing, the Dow, doing this with Wayne Dyer, and it's really good because there's an encouragement of not just on purpose surrounding yourself with like-minded people, because you could create this fantasy bubble and it's just not real.
yeah,
And so
That's true.
we're not gonna ever do that.
yeah. That's what I always say. I'm like, I honestly here don't have very many gay friends. There's just, I don't know if there's just less or we're not in that scene.
Yeah.
Like our scene is very different. But I think that's why we've seen so much progress in our circle. And it's what we're called to.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not always comfortable
No.
because there's a lot of people who have differences in thought, which is really, it's needed.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Me and Catherine don't agree on everything. Me and Marty definitely don't agree on everything. Lots of things. But we were raised by two different families.
Yeah.
So it's expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things.
It's the spice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is the spice.
There's a lot of things we agree on. There's a lot of things we don't agree on. We're working on it. We're working to just stop arguing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you can think of?
I should have made a little notes of like for sure what I wanted to communicate, but I think I covered them.
Yeah.
That I'm not. I've been on a podcast in Amarillo before, and it wasn't centered around this topic. It was something else, but it weirdly enough it came out or whatever. And so I'm not someone who wants to be somewhere and talk about myself,
Yeah.
but I'm comfortable doing it. I can do it. And so I thought, do I really want to do a podcast? But yes, I do, because like your goal is basically being, to communicate, and for someone to maybe listen, if it's just one person,
Yeah.
and it saves a life, because suicide is a real deal with being gay. It is a real deal. If this helps someone open up to think about going to church somewhere,
Yeah.
or helps a parent, that has a kid that's recently, told them about being gay or something. I just think it's good, for people to hear and to have that communication without without it being on TV with a cable news network and,
Yeah.
shouting or saying the vocabulary words that are unique to that cable news network,
Yeah.
and just using, different authentic words and being yourself,
Yeah.
So I wanted to do it because of that reason, because you guys are doing some really great work.
Thank you. I'm really glad you got to come on. And I'm glad I was like, oh my gosh, I need to text Doug. He's leaving Wednesday or Thursday. I don't remember which day it was, but I was like, oh, I forgot because life. And
Yeah.
that's why I was like, I'm sorry it's so late. If I don't do it now, I will totally forget again.
Yeah. And it was cool. We stayed up watching the movie. So
Oh,
no, we
nice.
stayed up playing games last night.
That's
what it
fun.
was.
Well, thank you for doing this. I I loved hearing your story, and
Thank you.
it was a great conversation. Really appreciate it. We're gonna miss y'all.
Well, thanks. But y'all can
Come to Florida.
to Florida as a family. It's a really,
We saw the pictures of your
it's
property.
not a beach, but it's like peaceful country.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I remember the pictures.
Yeah, and it's an hour to the beach, so come visit.
Yeah, we'll have to get out of here. We're trying to start traveling more, but soccer.
Yeah.
Dallas, that's where we always are. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm grateful.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Love it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to my mom's podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and give this video a big thumbs up. Also, thanks for your comments and your feedback. Hey guys, thanks. Hey guys, thanks for listening to my podcast. Oh gosh.